Hi, my name is Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the major problems that we have now that we've shifted the border between, well, the EU and what's going to be our customs union from within Ireland, which was always going to be a no-go, to between Northern Ireland and Great Britain. But first, if you find yourself enjoying the video, then please click the like button and subscribe to the channel. So the issue with the Irish sea border is it got rid of the backstop by creating a border not within Ireland, which, as I say, not really going to go down well, but within the UK. Now, given that the Republic of Ireland are delighted by this, I'm going to guess that the Irish lobby in the United States, which I've not heard what they've had to say about it, but I'm going to guess that given that they are the ones who prompted Congress to say they would block any Trump trade deal with the UK that breached the Good Friday Agreement, I'm going to suggest they're probably delighted as well. And a lot of people fearing what the Trump trade deal was going to look like were at least clinging on to the hope Congress will just block it. Well, again, I haven't heard what they've had to say on the matter, but I'm guessing now they won't. And that means there will be nothing in theory to stop Johnson selling off not just the NHS, but the UK itself in an everything must go closing down sale to the US. Bear in mind what that trade deal entails. Okay, negotiations haven't begun, but we know what it's going to look like because Donald Trump got his team to produce a document setting out which is, yes, they're starting negotiating position. Now, in normal trade negotiations, that is just what it is, a starting position. However, this is not a normal trade negotiation. Normal trade negotiations take years and years and years. And with the US in particular, they will take over 10 years at least. Now, we are in a weak position. Not only is Boris Johnson promising a great trade deal, not only has he promised that he'll get it quickly, but he's promised he'll get it with the US. Now, that all plays into Donald Trump's hands, or the US's hands, whoever's president at the time, because unless Donald Trump wins the next presidential election, it won't actually be him, because this can't happen until Boris Johnson delivers his no-deal Brexit, which looks like now the end of 2020, unless we stop him in the general election. And so he needs it quickly. So Donald Trump will just say, or whoever it is, because bear in mind, this isn't one of Donald Trump's normal harebrained schemes that plumb the depths of human depravity. No. This is actually in the interests of the United States. Any leader of the United States would push this deal because it's good for them, not for us. And Boris Johnson will lap it up. And think about it this way. If he can sell the idea that Brexit is a good idea to the British public, he can absolutely sell the idea that this consequence of it will also be good. So let's have a look at some of the things that were on that US trade deal that they won. The NHS must be available for purchase. That is one. Donald Trump said that. Later on, he had to say to a press conference, oh, no, he didn't mean that at all. But then later on said it would again. His secretaries of state have been saying the same thing. The NHS is up for sale, and that's all there is to it. And it can happen within a parliament. If Boris Johnson gets his majority in the general election, the NHS can actually be gone before the next general election. That's how serious this is. We have to lower our standards to accept their lower end food. Now, of course, that will take time. Not only does Boris Johnson have to deliver the no-deal Brexit so that he can start, repealing all the laws that maintain our standards, but that has to be done as well. That'll take some time. And again, there's no say in that. There's no room for negotiation there. The farming lobby is incredibly powerful in America. They will not allow the US government to negotiate any trade deal that doesn't include that. American goods must be favoured. So the deal involves protectionism from the US side. This is not going to be a free trade agreement in the real sense because it will include that government agencies, other companies in America have to buy American. No say in the matter. But we have to accept everything. And that makes the trade deal all one way. It's a way of increasing US exports to the UK, from which we make no money, and reducing UK exports to the US, from which we do make money, or we do at the moment anyway. But that's a consequence of the hard Brexit that Boris Johnson intends to deliver, more than the specific location of the border. It's just that the specific location of the border was our defence against that trade deal, and that's now been removed. So the main problem with the new location of the border is essentially twofold. The first is that there will now be a border within the UK. That means that UK citizens will have to produce documents to be checked in order to travel between two parts of their own country. Now, given that one of the foundations of Brexit was supposed to be sovereignty, it's hard to imagine a more robust assault on that than Brexit forcing us to whip out our passports to be checked by border guards when we're not even leaving our own country. And the second problem is that ministers and potentially even officials don't really understand how the border is going to work or the implications of it. Boris Johnson told Parliament that there would be no checks across the border. Now that is an obvious lie. He has just been straight up lying to Parliament. I do not know why Parliament are not holding him in contempt. If Great Britain diverges standards, then WTO rules demand that there must be checks. That's all there is to it. Now, at least these checks won't necessarily cause violence as one within Ireland itself inevitably would have. But I don't know. I don't know what unionists will do about this. But they must happen as a matter of international law, and that's all there is to it. Stephen Barclay, the Brexit minister, told Parliament that there would have to be checks. Now, again, I'm going to have to point out here, as I have in a previous video, you notice when these checks were going to be within Ireland, which was a complete no-go, they were all saying, oh no, there's systems in place that we can use to make sure that there will be no need for checks or technology, stuff like this, which of course didn't exist. They're not even pretending that now. Now that the Good Friday Agreement is not being waved in their face, they're not even pretending that there is any way of ensuring no checks at the border. So Stephen Barclay, the Brexit minister, is directly contradicting the Prime Minister because he's saying, of course, there'll have to be checks. Priti Patel, in her role as Home Secretary, didn't have a clue. She was facing scrutiny from the Home Affairs Select Committee in Parliament yesterday, and she didn't know the answers to the questions. Now, and she had to turn to her officials. Now, that is not unusual. Obviously, we know ministers are not really the experts. And frequently they will be asked questions that's on points of detail that, yes, they're going to have to refer to officials. That's fine, by the way, not having a pop at her for that. But this is a really important issue, and they weren't asking about detail as such. They were just asking about checks across the border. This is such a major issue that she should have known this. She should already have known it, and she didn't. She didn't know the answers to the questions. But when after turning to her officials, she did have to then admit that border forces would be involved. But of course, she wasn't able to provide details. And I think that select committee hearing was the one time that I've seen her where she didn't have a permanently smug look on her face. She actually looked quite concerned, completely out of her depth. And this is the second problem. People do not know how the border will work. And this is a border within your own country, not a border between your country and another country, which is also important to know how it works, inside your own country. And I believe it's genuine as well. I don't think it's like they're trying to keep bad news under wraps, as was the case with Yellowhammer, because that's one interpretation, that they do know the implications, they just don't want to say. But I actually believe it's genuine, because think about it. Until recently, no Brexiteer wanted a border up the Irish Sea. They didn't even want to talk about it. They all raged about the prospect when it came up, Johnson included. They even legislated against it. It became a reality very, very quickly as a result of legal constraints being placed on Johnson in order to prevent him taking us out without a deal. It was not his plan A or even plan B. It was a desperate gamble only, not a well thought out scheme months in advance. There will not have been a detailed feasibility study. I am quite convinced of that. So it's possible that even civil servants, who are the guys who usually know the details and then have to convert it into baby steps for ministers to understand, they also probably have no idea as well. Particularly credible if you imagine that any considerations that they're making are probably based on the government negotiating a trade deal, which is what they say they want. But you and I know that Johnson has no intention of negotiating a trade deal with the EU once we've left it. His withdrawal agreement bill doesn't even give time for it. It is designed to take us out without a deal, every line of it. So although there are features of the border that we can know the consequences of, because they are a result of international laws, those WTO rules that Brexiteers seem to have wet dreams about, we have no notion of how the mechanics of the border itself will work for people who wish to trade across it, or even just travel as citizens. We know what it'll have to accomplish to meet international obligations. We don't know how it's going to do it. And I don't think anyone does. So anyway, I hope you found the video interesting. If you'd like to support the channel further, then please click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.